Hello and welcome to Excellence in Capital Projects, webinar number 2. And very happy to be here today. A couple of Zoom meeting topics that we will be using the question and answer. So you should have a control bar at the top or the bottom. And you can put in a question there. We're going to try to hold questions until the end, but you can ask them at any time. And then we'll also be requesting plus delta feedback at the end. So a plus being something you liked about the webinar that you'd like us to continue for parts 3 and 4, and a delta being something that you would change. So for example, my sound was a little spotty on the last one, and so I've worked to update my connection and my mic. So with that, let's get going. So we're covering excellence in capital projects, and we're sharing experiences from healthcare, manufacturing, and oil and gas and other heavy industries. The overall series, we started with webinar number 1, talking about feasibility and upfront, really before even starting design. And we've moving today to talking about management during the design process. And in November, we'll finish with managing construction and effective team management, which spans all of these. Our content today, as always, is provided by a collaboration between Lean IPD, Growing Operations Advisors, and Owner Team Consultation, acting as project value engineers. Our agenda today will give an overview of our speakers and their experience. We'll talk about value assurance and why it's important. Talk about design optimization, then design optimization using minimum complexity solution, and finish with project validation and target value design. And we'll do a Q&A. So my name is James Pease. I'm one of your speakers today. My focus for the last 15 years has been building healthcare capital projects, and the last 10 working specifically with lean construction and integrated project delivery to do a big replacement program of hospitals in California for seismic compliance. I will let Chris introduce himself. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I am. So I'm Chris van den Berg. I spent my career starting off as a process engineer, later on project manager. The last 3 years I'm spending in management consulting in the mining, metals, minerals industry, on internal project process, reviews and auditing, and also management consulting on project controls, e.g. earned value management.
Thank you, Chris. Davide Gronchi speaking. Davide Gronchi, I'm a Managing Director of Growing Operations Advisors, who's a small new advisory company that has been created by me 1 year ago. We're working on operational excellence, on CapEx excellence, and on digital. In my previous life, I've started working in the industry, in home appliances and in automotive for 9 years. Then I moved to consultancy, and I've been working for McKinsey in Germany for 12 years. At McKinsey, one of my responsibilities was to create a so-called capital productivity practice, which is a group of people that are helping clients in optimizing CapEx. The recurring CapEx, so the small mid-sized CapEx, as well as the large investments. So my experience is most of all in discrete manufacturing, pharma, automotive, consumer goods, and I've been also working in service industry and in oil and gas. I'm happy here today to talk to you about design optimization. So Chris, it's up to you now.
Okay, so to start off with value assurance, and value assurance starts in the early stages during front-end loading, and it is carrying up to the approval of the project, which generally ends on the third phase. And I'm well aware that there are different names for the different stages, but it's basically a common process followed in the different stages. But we generally start with the business optimization. But most importantly, the value assurance is an independent peer review process to optimize the work done and ending with a proper definition and planning of the project. And we must realize that we are reliant on boards to approve projects. Now, the team are in the trenches, they're doing the work, and somewhere in between those two worlds, we need the assurance that the information considered by boards are of good quality and that there was sufficient work done by the project teams. The project teams generally, they are focused on doing a good job, but you need somewhere the cold eye reviews to ensure that the work they've done are of good quality, as said. So there are basic elements in the whole value assurance process. Yes, okay. So can we just remove that? Yeah. Can we just go back to that previous slide? So the building blocks is to start off knowing what our clients want. And then somewhere during the stage of any project, the engineers are designing the plant or facility that we want to build. And then we also need to fully understand the risk associated with those. And just before the end of the phase of any project, there's a gatekeeping process where we get this decision review team, and we've seen designs where we have got an independent decision review team that will recommend that project for approval by the boards for continuation and the sanctioning of resources to the project to continue. So the stage gate process is rather still important to follow throughout the lifespan of the project. Maybe we can go to the next phase of slide. So what is the key to the value assurance process? As we want to be proactive and not waiting till the end of the phase, there needs to be certain hold points throughout any phase or stage of a project before we reach the end of the phase where the board has to sanction it. And with these hold points, we can proactively try and predict where there is insufficient definitional planning work done before we continue to the next hold point in any particular phase. So hold and review points are agreed at framing and alignment, which is where we fully understand the requirements of the owner of the project. Purpose is furthermore to ensure that critical stage deliverables are identified and tracked throughout any phase of the project. Action needs to be taken where deviations are identified. So at any of those milestone points where the value assurance team intervenes are identified, and the team can then take action and rectify before we reach the end of stage. Ensure that deliverables still support overall business objectives. So we continually check what is agreed in the framing stages and the start of the project, and making sure that we also aligned with the business objectives. Another key point in the value assurance process is the gatekeeping process. So generally, the gatekeeping process consists of a few elements, And critical part of this value assurance process on the project can produce a recommendation at the end of the stage. So it's up to the value assurance team to recommend whether this project is ready and the definition and engineering work was done sufficiently, and that it is also completed according to the focus of a particular stage of the project. So, e.g., we in the early phases, we need to ensure that the right business alternative is selected. After that, we need to make sure that in the next phase that the technical alternatives is the best recommended. And lastly, before board approval, we need to ensure that we've also optimized and defined the scope properly. So stage gate reviews aim to ensure that projects are ready to move to the next stage. And what do we mean by ready to move to the next stage? If we haven't completed all the necessary planning or technical optimization work, we shouldn't continue to the next stage, and the team need to be sent back to review work and complete the necessary work before we go to the next stage. Assessment must cover the quality and completeness of deliverables, include the viability of the project. So what we are saying here is any design work or even planning work, cost estimating, all of those should be quality. And secondly, is it completed, the deliverables that we needed to produce for a particular phase of the project? And that alone is not good enough to say we can pass the gate. So we need to test the viability of the project. So the business case evaluation should support then all the good work, and as soon as we know there's quality work, completeness, and the project is viable, then we can continue to the next phase. The decision review normally relies on a value assurance report, and if there was any issues identified, that we clarify those, and there is sufficient mitigation actions identified in support of that report. And then the decision review will recommend the approval to the approval authority on the appropriate decision, whether to continue, rework, halt, or change, or terminate the project if it gets to that. So if the viability of the project is not there, then the recommendation should be to stop the project. So we must remember that it's also not a failure if we stop projects that is not viable. Can we continue to the next slide? So in any phase, there is many building blocks around the value assurance process. So there's the consistency reviews that looks at is there consistent assumptions made, and in any of the business case evaluation, any technical work that we do, is all those consistent throughout the process. So the quality reviews, looking at the quality of the work being done, is that to the required quality? And then the gate definition readiness. In our environment, we make use of the Construction Industry Institute. They've got the so-called project definition rating index, where you look at something like 70 different elements of the project and how well the definition of those elements of the projects was done. And against a benchmark, you then measure your project to see whether it's ready to continue to the next phase of the project. And considering all of those, the value assurance report is then drawn up and drafted, which is is an input to the decision review team, and where the business case is considered along with the value assurance report, and which then makes a recommendation to the board for a submission for the approval of the project. Generally, the project approval is according to the approval authorities, and the appropriate authority will then sanction the resources to the project team. So can we go to the next slide? So who are the key role players in value assurance? So the business owner, that is the team that is going to eventually run the facility or plant or whatever is built, or any project of that nature. And they are accountable for the business development. As we know, any plant without the necessary organizational structure cannot run it on its own. So that business development work has to be done. The project team, those are the team that are doing the necessary design, engineering, or project planning work. The value assurance team, they are independent team to assess the project deliverables and all work as done by the project team, and as a degree, and make sure that all that work is in alignment with the framing of the project. They produces the value assurance report, and also on the status of deliverables with the recommendation on continuation of the project. A decision review team, which will be normally appointed according to the risk profile of the project and capital value associated with those. And they will review that value assurance report along with the business case, and then produces the final recommendation to the approval authority on gate decisions.